Good afternoon, and welcome to another Facebook Live Lunch and Learn with the Center for African American Health. Coronavirus cases are at an all-time high. Please do your part to lessen the number by wearing a mask, practicing social distancing, and avoiding large gatherings. As we wait for a few more people to join, I'll go ahead and introduce myself and tell you a little bit more about the center. My name is Deidre Johnson, and I'm the CEO and Executive Director for the Center for African American Health. We've actually been in the Denver community for over 23 years. Our mission is the health and wellness of the African American community. As we move through today's session, please feel free to type your questions in the comment area, and we'll address them if time permits. We're all waiting for the final outcome of the 2020 election. Today, we thought it would be appropriate to have a conversation about policy and what we can do on the local level now that the election is behind us. My guest today is a board member of the Colorado Black Women for Political Action, a nonpartisan nonprofit organization that has been in our community since 1977. Welcome, Halisi Vinson.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. How are you?
Good, good. It is so great to see you.
I know, it's been too long. It has been entirely too long. As a matter of fact, Colorado Black Women for Political Action, we have not had an in-person meeting since February. So I haven't even seen in person really other CBWPA members or CBWPA board members. It's been tough. And with the outcome of this election not known, I'm sure folks are feeling a bit helpless, and hopefully not hopeless, but it's trying, right?
It is, which is why I'm glad we can talk to you today. So you have a really long history of political organizing in Colorado. Can you share more about your background and experience with our viewers, as well as the mission of the CBWPA?
Absolutely. It hasn't been that long actually. And I, in politics and organizing when Barack Obama started running for president. And I guess it's a little longer. So 2007, wow, that was fast. Right, that was fast, and I obviously that candidacy in that election was life changing for so many of us, and that's when I realized it's like there's certain things that we as Black folks probably have always believed about this country, and certain things that were like there's just no way, and his candidacy and election proved that a lot of preconceived notions were not necessarily true. And so the 2012 election, I actually ran for to be a delegate to the National Convention, and at the same time, so before that, in between the 2008 election and 2012, all I did was volunteer for local campaigns, and so it's really easy to get involved in local campaigns. You've got city council races, you've got county commissioner races, depending upon what city you live in. You have state house races and state senate races, and even congressional. Those are, and mayoral. So I volunteered for all of the people that I could vote for on my ballot. I volunteered, and I knocked on doors, and I made calls, though I don't like doing that so much. I like knocking on doors, which was why this time was so difficult. And then because of that, the people who were my state senatorial candidate and state house candidate endorsed me to be a national delegate. And then people started paying attention. Who is this person? It's like, I've been here, but just, only volunteering for the folks in my districts. And it's really, the thing about Colorado, which is so great, is we are so small in comparison to where I grew up, that it didn't take any time for certain candidates to know me by name and for me to be able to call them, once elected, and ask, you know, why isn't this happening? We need this to happen. This is what I'm hearing from my neighbors, etc. And so I'll get into more about that and how you can make that happen, how you can change an ask into action, into policy in a second. But so yeah, so after being national delegate, it was all over. You know, people sucked me into into, you know, I had Cleo Bree saying, "How come you don't belong to CBWPA?" And so I'm like, "CB what?" So I found out about Colorado Black Women for Political Action, which is a 44-year-old organization that it is the only homegrown organization in Colorado that is dedicated to making sure that Black folks have a seat at the table, that our voices heard, and to teach folks how to get involved in the political process. And that's our mission. And so yeah, 44, 45 years old this year, and started by a bunch of women. Some of the names you all would know: the first Black state senator, or female state senator, etc. And it's a great organization. They endorse, they you know, have educational programs, both for folks who want to run, for folks who want to get involved in civic engagement. They register voters, and everything in between. And this next year, even though the presidential election is over this next year, we have work to do. We have work to do because, as I was talking to y'all before we started, you know, 48% of Americans have decided that it's good to have racism be alive and well in America. 48% of people have decided that healthcare is not a right, that healthcare is for the privileged. 48% of Americans have decided that LGBTQ people, that kids in cages, that, you know, I can go on and on, that Muslims should not have the same rights as others. So we have work to do. And the way we get that done is through what people call relational organizing.
Very nice.
Yeah. Do I sound fired up?
Well, and we have to be, because so much is at stake.
So much is at stake.
So
much is at stake.
Let's discuss the various ways people can be civically engaged on a local level.
Yeah. So, and this is the thing, and the reason why I brought up 48%, because we don't have control over that, right? But we do have a lot more control over what happens locally, and how we, you know, this is, I hate to say it this way, but how we in Colorado can protect our rights while they may be eroding other places, because really that's the first step. Like, you can't tell somebody else to clean up their house till you get your own house clean. And so depending upon what the subject matter is, it depends on who you're going to talk to, right? And so one of the things that folks have to understand is who's in charge of what. If you are talking about something like healthcare, for instance, and the fact that we here in Colorado decided to expand Medicaid, we here in Colorado decided to set up our own Affordable Care Act exchange so that we could have control over it, that happens at the state level. So the folks that you need to talk to are your state senators and your state representatives. And all of that information can be found very easily on the Secretary of State's website, who those folks are. If you are talking about traffic in your neighborhood, if you're talking about the roads or some construction that's going on, or how land is being used, that's municipal, that's your city and or your county. And so you need to talk to your city council members, or you need to talk to your county commissioners about those types of things. Anything to do, for the most part, with what the Center for African American Health is going to be engaged in is going to be happening at the state level, unless you're talking about a health fair or something like that. Perhaps if you're talking about what we can do about giving access to homeless folks, that could be at a municipal level, but probably should be engaged at the state level. So how do you turn anger into action? How do you turn an ask into a law? The first thing that you want to do is, you know, if you and your neighbors or you and your friends and family have been talking, how come this, or why not that? that's the first question that needs to be asked. Where is there a need, and how can that be solved? So if you've got an answer to the problem, then you should write it up first. What is the problem? And second, some suggestions on how to change it. And then you call your state senator or your state rep or both, and you say, I've got something for you. I know something that needs to be changed. The time to do it is now. Here in Colorado, state representatives and state senators are only allowed to put forth 5 bills per year. The good part about it is, unlike what happens in Washington, D.C., all your state reps and state senators get to put forth 5 bills a year, guaranteed. It has to go to the floor. They have to take a vote on it. What happens after that remains to be seen. But they can't stop it. They can't filibuster it. They can't do any of the stuff that you hear about on the news. And so oftentimes they are looking for good bills to put forth because they only have 5 and they want to put their best foot forward. They don't want to put, let's make chapstick available for all kids. No, they want to put something that has meaning, that gives them meaning and gives them a good name so that they have a right to be reelected. So once you put that in and once you call them, then you need to sell them on it. And if you have enough information on the what, and you say, look, I've talked to people in the district and this is something that needs to change, and they know that they're going to have some folks behind them, then all the better. So once they say yes, then it's time to start organizing. If they say no, then it's time to start organizing. And how you do that is what we call relational organizing. So let's just say there's 3 of you that got together to say this needs to change. We need to make sure that X, Y, and Z happens. You start with your friends and your family members that live in Colorado. Hopefully that live in the district, but it doesn't have to be, because they are serving all of Colorado. Yes, they're looking out for their district, but when they take a vote, it's going to affect the whole state. So all around Colorado will help just as well as your district. And you call them and say, this is my proposal. This is the problem that I see. What do you think? This is the solution I'm thinking. What do you think? And if people get excited, you say, great, can I write your name down as endorsing this? That's the first step. The second step is, will you promise to call 3 people and ask them if they will get on board? And if Sally says, yes, I'll call 3 people, you write down Sally's name, and then you say, okay, who are you going to call? I'm going to call Joe, I'm going to call Jill, I'm going to call Jack. Great. By when? Because you know how we do. So you say, okay, Jill, Jack, Joe, you're going to call by next Wednesday. On Thursday, you call Sally and say, did you have a chance to call Jack, Joe, and Jill? Can we write their names down and their addresses that they are endorsing this? And that's how relational organizing goes. And then, Zoom is free up to 45 minutes for as many people as you want. And you say, you know what? Every other Saturday morning, we're going to have a meeting, and we want more and more people to be on this Zoom. So we want Jack, Jill, and Joe to be on this Zoom, and everybody else that you have said that they're going to sign on. Once you get a critical mass, once you get 50 or 60 people on that Zoom, you invite your state rep and your state senator on that Zoom too. And you say, look, this is what we want. Once that happens and they say yes, now you've got your posse behind you. They're going to start, what happens is the lobbyists are still in charge. Let's not get it twisted, right? So they're going to start calling in all stakeholders that may be affected by this change in policy. So when I got something passed, it was for small businesses. And so they called in chambers of commerce. They called in the small business, this and that association or whatever. So you get the point. And we all got around a table and said, here's the proposal. What do you think? It is very important that you talk about the benefits of what you are suggesting, because if you don't, somebody else is going to shoot it down and tell you how this is not going to work. And it's going to have a negative effect on this and this and that and the other. So you want to be prepared with your stories. Stories sell. facts tell, right? Be prepared with your story. I know this lady named Deidre Johnson, and this is what happened to her, and it could have been solved or not happened had XYZ happened, or XYZ been the law. So you want to have those stories as well. And then be prepared to show up at the Capitol, because it's going to go before a council, it's going to go before a committee, and they're going to decide whether it goes on to the next process. I'm going to tell you, with my bill, Deidre, they sent it to the Kill Committee. Now, there is no such thing as the Kill Committee, but there is a such thing as the Kill Committee. So if they send your healthcare bill to Veterans Affairs, they're trying to kill it. So, and that's what they did to my bill. They sent it to the Kill Committee. So I called the head of the committee that should have heard it, who was not the same political affiliation that I affiliate with. But, you know, no permanent enemies. You work across the aisle, you do what you need to do. And we found that commonality, and he got it out of the Kill Committee, and we got it passed.
That's fantastic.
So, yeah, so that's basically in a nutshell how it works. And, you know, citizens have the right to lobby. And I'm going to tell you an old-fashioned trick. When you start getting Jack, Jill, and Joe on the phone, and you're not getting the yes that you want, you start lobbying your folks. You start lobbying the people on the committee. All that stuff is on the Secretary of State's website. If it's a business bill, you look at the business committee. Health bill, you look at the committee that's in charge of healthcare. And you start getting people to call them. You start getting people to email them. But I'm going to tell you the best way: fax. The old-fashioned fax, because it's a piece of paper that will get put on their desk, and you have a receipt, so you know they got it. And so when you start calling, it's like, look, I faxed you. I know you got it. I know you got that piece of paper because it went through and it's on your desk. And I'm here to tell you, we're going to be in your face about this. So,
you know what I really like about the example you gave is so many people kind of assume, well, if I want to do something, I need thousands. But you talked about just having, 50 folks as a part of your team.
yeah, it's just like when they do surveys. They don't survey all of America to say what the polls say or whatever. All you need is a sampling. And then you can, and people have, there's some implications that can be made from that. So for every person, you should assume that there's probably 100 other people who feel the same way.
And so you spoke to this a little bit in your example, but what advice can you share about engaging allies to help further a cause when you're trying to influence people, organizations, and policymakers?
Yeah, and it's great to have. Are you talking about allies as in other organizations or other people, or both?
Both, actually.
Yeah. So when you get a critical mass of your own folks, to me, it's important to bring ally organizations in as early as possible, because people will support what they help create. So let's just say, like CBWPA, we work often with Calor, we work with the Working Families Party, and other organizations, Black Lives Matter. We work, and when we come up with an idea, before we go putting it out there, before anything happens, we talk to the people that we want to partner with us on that. And we say, this is our proposal. We want to, like this year, what we wanted to do was increase Black voter turnout by a certain percentage, and especially among those who don't often vote, who vote less than 50% of the time, including presidential races, right? And so, Calor was trying to do the same thing with Latinos, and it's like, okay, so how can we pull our resources together for shared programming? And we did that pretty early on. And so by the time we got to go time, everybody was on the same page. And I'm going to tell you, Deidre, I'm so proud of our president. We got thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars worth of either money or services donated towards turning out the vote and this is on a C3 side, so not for a particular candidate, truly just turning out the vote people of color, and specifically Latinos and African Americans. And I'm happy to say that 55% of the folks that we went after showed up and voted this time.
Wow.
So yeah, so I was happy about that. And then the same is true with allies. Like if we're talking about a Black Lives Matter subject and you want, folks who are not Black to engage, the same is true. Come to them early, have specific asks, because some folks will take over a thing if you let them. And allies need to know that they're in a support, especially when it comes to Black Lives Matter type of subjects. Anything that is really about Black folks, they need to understand that we need them in supporting roles, not leading roles. Because no one truly understands what it feels like to be Black in America except for Black folks in America. And that's just a simple truth. And oftentimes when we talk about our truth and our reality, others don't necessarily believe it. So it's important that that they understand that we're coming early. We need you. We want you to support our efforts.
Thank you. That was very well put. So in 2018, Colorado voters decided to overhaul the state's redistricting process, and applications are currently open for a citizen-led commission. Can you give us some background on this initiative and how people can get involved?
Yeah. And and I'm going to be perfectly honest, I'm not sure that I was happy with that. And that redistricting is important. Okay, first of all. And so I will explain really, really fast what it is, because we're making assumptions that people even know what it is.
Sure.
And why. The way we did it back in 2010, it was still kind of citizen-led, and it was definitely bipartisan. And what that resulted in were more seats that were competitive. We don't want overly gerrymandered seats that are not competitive to one party or the other. We create better legislators when there is, competition. So if you look at Congressional District 6, currently held by Congressman Jason Crow, that is a competitive seat. It's about one-third for unaffiliated Republicans and Democrats. And that is making him a better legislator, because he knows he can't sit on his laurels like we've seen across the country and just assume that he is going to be reelected. He's got to listen, he's got to put forth great policy, etc. So redistricting is when we redraw the lines of where districts are. And that's why I'm talking about gerrymandering and CD6. It's redrawing the lines, and it is based upon the census. So I hope that everyone who's listening actually filled out their census. It's too late now, because the person in the White House decided to end it early. Why the census is important is because the federal money that we get is based upon human beings that live in certain areas. And I said human beings, not citizens or non-citizens. It's based upon human beings that live in an area. And it decides how many Congress people we get per state, which decides how many electoral votes we get. So everybody knows the amount of electoral votes you have are your 2 senators plus your Congress. So we have 9. We have 7 Congress people, 2 senators. That's 9 votes. That's what we get. And then other places have more or less, depending upon their population. So we are going to start redistricting efforts, as we've already started. There's actually already been a group talking about this and talking about a strategy. But as far as the commission goes, there is going to be a recorded information session that is going to happen, I think, at the same time as one of your events, but it will be recorded. So if you want to get access to that, I suggest that you go to cbwpa.org and sign up for our email list, and you will get information and a link on how to view that. But let me just tell you, we need Black folks to apply to be on the commission. And CBWPA has been asking for those applications. They have to have people from all walks of life, all political persuasions, and all around the state. So whether you live in the Denver metro area or not, We need so many Black people to apply so that we can get some Black folks on that commission and make sure that our voice is heard. The application deadline is November 10th. November 10th is the deadline. And you don't need to necessarily understand the whole process. They will let you know that. You do need to understand what redistricting is. But a lot of the things that the commission will be doing is they want to make sure that the community's voice is in the room. And so just because there's an area, for instance, that is registered with a certain party doesn't mean that those people always vote that way. And if you are involved in your community and you know, actually we're pretty middle of the road and this is how we generally think about things, and you can see that through our local elections, then those are voices that we need at the table to make sure when we redraw those lines that all voices are heard. The other thing that we want to make sure happens is we don't want them drawing lines all through the Black communities and separating our vote. There's two things that we want to make sure that happens. Like House District 7, it has always been, that's the far northeast, has always been represented by Black folks. If they start cutting up House District 7, then that is going to lessen our voice, because if we don't have a majority, we're not going to necessarily always elect a Black person. And so that's just one less seat. The same is true with other communities as well. So we want to make sure that when redistricting happens, that we're taking into consideration not just the competitiveness, but who's in those communities, and is their voice going to be diminished or is their voice going to be heard? Whether it is Latino, Black, or has to do with economics or religious or whatever. We want to make sure that voices are heard, because I'm telling you, folks will be good about splitting up some votes. And we've seen this in other parts of the country where they'll take a university, for instance, and split it up into 5 different districts, like a pie. And so those kids do not have a voice.
You know, and it can't be overstated how important it is for us to be in spaces representing, because sometimes even that sole presence changes the dynamic and the possibility.
Indeed.
In that room.
Indeed.
So we have a question, one of the ones that came in. Any tips on how money impacts policy and how community members can work together to overcome the money trades political power issue?
Money is locally, money affects policy in 2 ways. One, there's paid lobbyists. So if an organization, let's just say the Denver Metro Chamber of Commerce, they have a lobbyist, and they have the money to pay that lobbyist, who's always going to be down at the Capitol between January and May when we're in session, every day in our elected officials' face. And so that is how it affects policy. But guess what? There's more of us than there are of them. And people power trumps money every day of the week. It takes more work. It's easier just to throw some money at something, but you will get a critical mass if you use relational organizing to organize around your policy and or your purpose. And the notion that somebody may not be reelected and that this is what the community wants. I think most of the folks at the Capitol, most of our city council people are not just in it to be reelected. They really are in it to create good policy, if for nothing else, to create a good name for themselves, and bad policy does not do that. The other way that money affects policy is by commercials. And we saw that. We just had a tragic thing happen in the state of Colorado. And I think it was Constitution Amendment number 77, I believe. Basically what it said, it was very insidious. It said, shall there be a change to the Constitution that only United States citizens can vote in an election? Well, our Constitution currently says that all US citizens can vote in an election, and they want to change it from all to only. And that small change means that you and I are going to have to prove that we are a citizen prior to voting. That's the change. And that's what went over overwhelmingly, because the language was so subtle. It's already the law that only citizens can vote. We need to change that. But it paves the way. It paves the way for voter ID laws. And so we're going to have to fight that. And we're going to have to fight to get it out of the Constitution. We will not have poll taxes in Colorado. But money, the people who put that forth, they're not even Coloradans. And money put all of those commercials on the air and made it seem like, undocumented folks were trying to vote and all this other nonsense. And it's just not true.
And a lot of people assume that voter suppression is very obvious, and it's not all the time. It's very insidious and takes some time. Yep. We have run out of time today, but this has been fantastic, Halisi.
I'm sorry, I talk too much.
Oh, no, this is exactly what we wanted, to really share your knowledge with the community.
Oh, good.
So just to let folks know, this video will be available along with other information on the center's website at caahealth.org. Next week, we'll be having a Facebook Live Lunch and Learn with the Colorado Department of Human Services.
Wow.
And we'll provide the community with information about resources available to help those in need.
Great, great, great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deidre.